We're almost on the Masechta, right?
What's that?
We're almost on the Masechta, right?
We're almost done. We're almost done with the Masechta.
How many plot?
121 or so. But try not to think of it that way.
Oh,
Try to think of it in terms of how long it's going to take us to finish,
Of course.
which
Yeah,
is
no.
pretty short, honestly.
Yeah, relatively.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way: by July 4th weekend, you're going to be done with
You're
either
gonna miss
all
it,
or if not. Yeah, you're going to miss it.
You're
Trust me.
gonna miss it.
Finishes July
You
22nd.
got no time. You're right. You're right.
Okay.
Kevin, are you going to keep a whole notebook of all the...
I haven't.
of all
Yeah,
the
my notes are illegible for most people, but yeah, for me, I'll have it next time around.
Once they're digitized.
My goal is after we go through this once, I want to do it the second time. I want to do 2 daf a day. I want to finish it quicker.
What are you going to do? I'm in a day. That's what I was going to do.
No, I think it's the other way around.
Yeah, you put half of it on one day, half of it. That's
Yeah,
great.
I know.
You're recording. It's great.
We
So he's setting up. I'm a daily. I thought he was setting it up.
And honestly, by the way, once the truth is that would be smart. What would really be smart is every day's share.
Yeah.
You cut the share, give it over as a blot, but
Right.
cut it in half so that way. But yeah, I think after we finish the first time through, I would like to go through it again. Maybe not in the shear, but like myself, I want to try to do it fast because I feel like the faster you do it, the better retention you'll have because like you'll be able to cover a lot of ground fast.
He reviewed it twice as fast.
And then the third time through, we do like 4 daf a time, because once you're familiar with it, you just go fast. Either way, okay. Today's daf is being learned as a schus, refuah shlema for Esther Sora Bas Chaya Pesel Dov, Mordechai ben Bela Sheva, Elisheva Shena Bas Adina Edel, Eva Shlomit Bas Ilana Esther, Hadara Sara Bas Pesilea, Leora Bas Sara. It should be a schus for Yeshua Bekara, for Shulam Eschana Leah Bas Rachel, Shalom ben Malka Reza, and of course, as an Eloi Neshama for Yitzchak Moshe ben Yehuda Yeshua HaKoyin and Ritzia Victor ben Aaron Elazar. They should all have an Aliyah Neshama. You want to add a name?
Rani
Yecheskel ben Pesilea. You got to send me the name. I don't add it. I don't.
What do you do with
Unless-
Leia, by the way? What's
Yeah.
going on?
It's
Siblings?
It's my ex-wife.
meaning the Pesilea is the ex-wife.
Is he
Yeah.
children? What? Children?
There's him as well.
Oh man, and this Torah we learned should help them all. Okay, we're holding right now in the middle of what I'll call like when you're driving on the highway and it's pouring rain, and your windshield wipers are going as fast as possible, and in the end of the day, it's not doing anything, and you're on the highway and you're like, oh my gosh, you're sitting there like this with the fingers, you're white knuckling it through the I-95 to get back to New York, and then you come under an underpass, and for 2 seconds, you could see everything. And you're like, oh, okay, that's what it is. And then bam, right back into the rain. That's where we're at. We have like 2-3 daf right now where we get to take a deep breath. And honestly, in another Masechta, these Gemaras would be at minimum regular, maybe even slightly hard. I mean, the Shas topics here. Last night we talked about Enos Achalissa. We started to talk about Leisus Kohen. These are major topics in Halacha. But in Yevamos, these are not the main topic. And today's daf is similar. We're going to be continuing to talk about very interesting discussions. It's going to get not agadic, but it's going to get slightly agadic. And then we have a little bit more. And then it's Hashem, as we get to the end of the parak, we'll come back into some of the Reuven and Shimon and Levi and Sachar and Zulun and all the different people and brothers and sisters and Ervas and Arias and Saras and all the stuff. But for now, we get to learn a little bit, a little different. Okay, we're in the middle of the Loisus Code discussion. Just a very brief reminder from last night and yesterday. So our Mishnah had said that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel both have different opinions about whether a tzara is considered an erva or not. Okay, so I'm going to make sure we're all on the same page. Remember, what's a tzara? A tzara is the co-wife. So now we've been working under the assumption that until now, what is a co-wife? A co-wife from Psukim is an erva, meaning that if Reuven and Shimon are brothers and Shimon dies with 2 wives, and one of them is Reuven's relative, then not only is the relative going to be pater from Yibam and Chalitza, but even the co-wife, the tzara, is going to be pater. Now, the consequence of being pater from Yibam and Chalitza is, of course, that she doesn't need to do Yibam and Chalitza. But it also is a consequence that if she does do Yibam, then Reuven is having relations with an erva.
Is the status of an erva that they have to do yibum?
No, it's the other way around. An erva is completely pater from Yibam, right? Meaning an erva is your daughter. You don't do Yibam with your daughter. Yibam makes you pater from Yibam. Daughter makes you pater from Yibam. Not only that, it makes the tzara pater from Yibam, the co-wife. So again, Reuven and Shimon. Shimon dies, 2 wives, Dinah, regular normal lady, and Rachel, Reuven's relative. We've been working under the assumption, which is the correct assumption, that if, let's say, Reuven said, I don't care about this business, I want to do Yibam with Dinah. I like Dinah. If he has sex with Dinah, He just had an active relations with a woman who is chayiv kares. That's his brother's wife. There's no mitzvah yibum in such a situation. If they have a child, child's a mamzer. Nothing to talk about. This is like straight up. No different than sleeping with the erva herself.
And the Tzara too?
Tzara's an erva. Tzara's an erva, of course.
Mamzer?
Baby's a mamzer, sure. It's a chayiv kares. It's an eishes action. Like
That's
a mitzvah.
Beis Hillel.
Oh, so I'm just setting up for the rest of the oilam of you, yeah?
Didn't we see his alarm? Didn't we see
No, it's like siamish is a chutzal, ishzar is a lav. Meaning, if there is a din yibum, if she now goes and sleeps with someone else, that's a lav.
Right.
But the tzara herself is an erva.
Chutzah.
Yeah, chutzah is a different thing. So now, chutzah, Beis Shammai. So Beis Shammai had a drasha. We don't get too much into the details. It was yesterday's stuff. But Beis Shammai had a drasha. He argues on Beis Hillel about this tzara. He holds the tzara completely kosher for yibum. You cannot find a more diametric machlokes here. Beis Hillel says, in our classic case, remember, Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Shimon dies, leaving two ladies. Dina's our kosher one. Rachel is our erva. So what's Dina? Dina's a tzara's erva. She's a co-wife of an erva. Beis Hillel says, that might as well be your daughter. Beer with her creates a mamzer. There's no din yibum, nothing to talk about. Beis Shammai says, Dina is 100% a woman you have to do yibum with. Not only are you allowed to, you must. There's zika, meaning we don't consider her pater. This is a fundamental Yevamos machlokas. Now, this wouldn't make a difference if Beis Shammai lived in California and Beis Hillel lived in New York and they never saw each other. No big deal. The ladies that live in Beis Shammai's world who are mamzerim, or creating mamzerim according to Beis Hillel, because again, Beis Shammai holds that the tzara is a din yibum. Beis Hillel holds that's your brother's sister, your brother's wife. So that means, according to Beis Shammai, when you do yibum with this lady, you're being mekayim a mitzvah, and that child is a completely kosher child who's the byproduct of a big mitzvah. The kid is actually the one that is filling up his father's house. That's a big, tremendous mitzvah. Mitzvah yibum. Beis Hillel says that kid's a mamzer because his mother you are not allowed to have sex with. Why? Because she's your brother's wife. That doesn't have a mitzvah. So that means that, let's say they had a child, and we'll call the child, Hillel would call the child something like Tracy, because she's a mamzeres. But Shammai would say, no, that's not Tracy, that's Tirza, because she's a kosher. Literally, right? You understand? The massive problem over here. This is the beginning of the discussion why the Gemara started talking about lo siskaidu. What's lo siskaidu? Lo siskaidu is a halacha. Generally speaking, we try to avoid having Klal Yisrael keeping the mitzvahs in a way where it looks like we keep more than one set of rules. Now, obviously, like I mentioned last night, this does not mean that if you dive in a certain nusach here, when it comes to minhag is a little bit different. Again, within reason. Obviously, if you can't have a minhag to eat treif, right? Meaning minhag is different customs developed over time, and so you guys might eat the kidneys on Pesach, and these people don't eat the kidneys. You have certain things that you have to sort of clarify exactly how far this concept goes. But generally speaking, what it's going to do is we try not to have it look like we're keeping two Torahs. That's the language the Rishonim use. Nira kishtei Torahs. It looks like two Torahs. Like the Torah said, don't eat flesh and milk, and it also said don't eat flesh with. You have to know at what point the rules are like two Torahs versus not. It's a subtle distinction because, for instance, why isn't it shtei Torahs, kidneys and not kidneys? I mean, why isn't that loisus going to do? Meaning, I'm saying it's not, but why isn't it? Right? Meaning the Sephardim, they eat. They're yeah. I mean, the fact that there's the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah and Sephardim passing like the Shulchan Aruch, we generally pass. Why isn't that loisus going to do? No one would chas shalom not marry a Sephardi just because, or the other way around. Oh, I heard they don't say slichos during Elul or something.
People do. People don't.
Yeah, but those people are. But the general rule is, though, is anyone who I respect and anyone who we all would respect would say those people are doing wrong things by doing that. That's not correct. Meaning to not marry someone, that would be the equivalent of in the outside world of being a racist. Meaning to me, that's not a real thing. Just because you don't like the fact that they, sing funny to you, you sing funny to them. So you have to know exactly. And today's not the day to discuss the details of it, but just to keep an eye on the idea. So the Gemara had discussed a couple of suggestions as to what the explanation was. One of them was that Reish Lakish said that when it comes to minhag, like you said before, that's already not loisus to do. It has to be something that is a byproduct of halacha. Meaning, Reuven says, Beis Shammai says this, Beis Hillel says that, Rebbe Elazar says this, Rebbe Akiva says that. We have to have a psak. There needs to be a psak halacha. So you can't just be like, well, I hold like him, he holds like him, and all of a sudden, So why does that? So how far do you take it? Can I open bottle caps on Shabbos? This group of people says yeah. This group of people says no. Why is not like this good? Again, not a simple question that has a simple answer, but you have a question?
I ask if it's kasha.
Well, by definition, yeah, go ahead.
Who cares what Beis Shammai? We go by Beis Hillel, right?
Well, okay, so it's a very good question. It's a very you're 100% right. Adrabah. It's not a klutz kasha.
Why?
You want to keep on asking the same question 4 times? I'm telling you, it's not a klutz kasha. Why is it not a klutz kasha? Because the Gemara is going to address. It's a very good question. We saw earlier in the Gemara, what did we say? We said we wanted to try to prove that the din of our Mishnah is not having anyone with a machlekes in it. And the Gemara said, what do you mean? It's only according to Beis Hillel. And later on, now we just met Beis Shammai in the first parak. There's a machlekes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. What did the Gemara say? Beis Shammai b'mokem Beis Hillel einay Mishnah. That's not a machlekes. You're right. It's a very good question. We do not. The question is, at what point in history did that become the fact? And more importantly, our question in the Gemara isn't so much what do we do. The question is, what did Beis Shammai do? Like a more humorous version of this, or a more humorous version of this might
Did he hold like Beis Hillel? Did he do his own right?
Do you say Hashem's name during Chalitza?
I think so, yeah.
You say it, but you don't destroy it, right?
Correct, yeah. Why?
Why don't we do Chalitza at a Safek? Not to create a mamzer.
Oh, so that's mamish. That's the suggestion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri yesterday's daf. Yeah, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. We'll see today. At the end of the day, we get to it. He suggests that, and for various different reasons, the Gemara doesn't want to do it. But I mean, that would solve the whole problem. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. 1 second. So the classic, more humorous question they would ask would be,
Beis Shammai do. Beis Shammai, what do they do?
think about Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. Like there's Rashi Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam. So when Rabbeinu Tam visited Rashi, his grandfather, right, came to his house, maybe for, I don't know, Shabbos, Sunday morning, he wakes up, they go to shul. Did Rabbeinu Tam wear Rashi Tefillin, or did he wear Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin?
Rabbeinu Tam, because he was the son-in-law. He was the grandson through a daughter, not a son.
Okay, so there you go. Chaim David has them set on it. But I'm saying, the question is,
had daughters.
that's true. Yeah. So how does it work? Meaning, if you would have lived during the early 1900s, late 1800s, and you would have been in Europe, and you would have been going to a Rav to ask a shayla, you would have gone to the Aruch HaShulchan, most probably, right? Chafetz Chaim was in Radin, and granted, he became the last posek Achron, but it's very possible that if you didn't live in Radin, you went by the Aruch HaShulchan, even though nowadays that's not the case. Why isn't that Loisus Gaidu? Obviously, that's not true. Loisus Gaidu does not mean that if you have a Rav passing one way and a Rav other, you can have Rav Adarabbi, you're supposed to do that. So the Gemara is going to address today exactly, to a certain extent, how we do that. So the Gemara had discussed Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. When Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel have a machlekes, the Gemara said, why isn't that a case of Loisus Gaidu? So the Gemara had said at the end of yesterday's daf, it asked from our Mishnah, Ha Beis Shammai matir and hatzaras la'achim Beis Hillel eisrim. Rish Lakish, why isn't this a problem of Loisus Gaidu? And here it's not a simple case of Loisus Gaidu of Nir Kashnei Tayers. You have the separate problem, the added problem of
Mamzer.
Beis Hillel's, some of Beis Hillel, the women according to Beis Hillel are ervas, in which case then you got mamzerim running around, and how could they marry into each other? And the Mishnah is very clear that they would marry into each other, meaning Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel would have no problem marrying. There would be a wonderful shidduch. This chash of a person from Beis Shammai would marry this chash person from Beis Hillel, and they wouldn't stop, even though it's possible that there was mamzeris there. So the Gemara says no, and there it introduces a fascinating conversation. Mi sabris, first word on the line. Mi sabris asu Beis Shammai k'divrayim. Just because we have a machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, do you really think Beis Shammai paskin like themselves? Meaning, says the Gemara, do you think that the Beis, now again, it's important to understand, we always refer to Beis Shammai as a person. It's not true. That's like referring to Tosfos as a person. Tosfos is not a person. Tosfos is a group of people. They are Tosfot. They're a plurality of additional rabbis, right? So you can have different opinions within Tosfos, just like you can have different opinions within Beis Shammai. We quote Beis Shammai as a school, but really there was Shammai, and then there was the house of Shammai, right? So Misabras also Beis Shammai k'divrayim. Do we hold that all of the people in the house of Shammai necessarily followed the halacha that they felt was correct? Lo yasu Beis Shammai k'divrayim. That's Reish Lakish's answer as to how you explain our Mishnah. Now, it's a little bit difficult to say that they didn't do like themselves, meaning it'll explain the Mishnah very nicely. How did they marry into each other? Because everyone held the same thing. I mean, even though they argued maybe in Lumdis, or they argued in what the halacha should be, in terms of how they practice, they all practiced one form of halacha, so there's no problem. Rabbi Yochanan held no, Amar Asu ve'Asu, that Beis Shammai held like themselves. So it's going to be a little confusing as we go through this, because every time it says Asu, Asu means they held like themselves. Meaning asu means they did different than Beis Hillel. Lo asu means they did the same. So it's sort of it's the backwards. Lo is going to mean the same, and asu is going to mean different. Ubeplugt the Rav Shmuel, meaning to say the Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish are arguing the same machlokes Rav Shmuel. The Rav Amar lo asu Beis Shammai k'divrayim. Rav holds that Beis Shammai did like Beis Hillel, meaning they didn't differentiate. Lo asu means they didn't differentiate. Shmuel Amar asu ve'asu, they did differentiate. Meaning again, depending upon which way you hold, you either have Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel all doing the same thing, or Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel holding two completely separate things. And again, we'll have to see why isn't that a problem of Leisus to do if
Only here, or this is a shot, or shots?
Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel in all places. It happens to be it's coming up here, but
Right.
the discussion over here is.
Got it.
I asked the Gemara 1 second. Amos, at what point are you saying that Beis Shammai no longer held like themselves, but rather they held like Beis Hillel? Ask the Gemara. Ilema kodem bas. I mean, this machlekes. When is this machlekes in history referencing? It says Ilema kodem baskol. If it's before the baskol, what's the baskol referring to? Here we know the Gemara says, a famous Gemara, that there was a baskol that had gone out saying that the halacha elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim, super famous Gemara. However, in that baskol it said the halacha is kid Beis Hillel. Meaning, it wasn't saying that Beis Hillel is right and Beis Shammai is wrong. It was saying that they're both right, whatever that means. Not for now. And we pass on like Beis Hillel, meaning to say that baskol l'chayra applied to Beis Shammai also. Meaning the baskol came out differently than every other area of halacha and said halacha is kid Beis Hillel. So it says the Gemara, Ilema kodem baskol. We're talking before the baskol came out saying that the halacha is like Beis Hillel. Asked the Gemara, my time at the Manda Amar Lo also. Then why would Beis Shammai not be holding like Beis Hillel? So you'll say the machlekes is happening after the baskol came out. My time in demand amaros. So again, before the baskol came out, Beis Shammai should hold like themselves, and Beis Hillel should hold like themselves, which is perfectly normal. Every rabbi should paskin how they feel is the right halacha. Once the baskol comes out telling us that the halacha is like Beis Hillel, then even Beis Shammai's got to sort of follow the baskol. So when it says, I'll give you two answers. Iba is same kodem baskol, Iba is same lacher baskol. Say both. So that's the Gemara one by one. Iba is same kodem baskol. I can explain the machlekes is a good machlekes, even if it's talking before the baskol came out saying the halacha is like Beis Hillel. Uki going to Beis Hillel ruba. That the general rule would be that of the group of people that are part of Beis Shammai and the group of people part of Beis Hillel, if you add them all up, there's more people in Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, so therefore they represent a majority. And we know the general rule is that when you have a question of a suffix, you go by the majority, right? And according to the opinions who held that they didn't differentiate, that they went like Beis Hillel, right? The Beis Hillel ruba, that makes sense because Beis Hillel is the rov, like I just explained. However, Umanda Amar Asu, the ones who hold that Beis Shammai differentiated and held like themselves and not like Beis Hillel, despite the fact that Beis Hillel is the majority, Kiazlina and Basra, they say it's because when do we say you go by the majority? Only when what? And when there's a true equality in terms of their quality, their chachma, meaning Group A and Group B are equal in chachma, in quality, then yes, you go by quantity, whoever is the rov, whatever is the majority. However, this is generally something that comes up many times in Shas. We know that Beis Shammai were considered, simplest way to say it is smarter, but it's more than that. They had more chachma, they were known to be sharper, whatever that means exactly, and therefore you only say that majority in terms of quantity is a factor when the quality is equal. But if the quality of Beis Shammai is higher, whatever that means, then you don't rely on majority, and Beis Shammai has every right to act in accord with their own opinion, even after, even before the baskol. Does that make sense?
But it's always higher. It's always going to be, but his Madregra, Beis Shammai is always going to be higher. You said that. We know that, right?
So we
No.
know from here.
No,
right? We don't know from here.
but does it only apply before the baskol? Once the baskol comes down, Hashem says, I don't
Doesn't make
care.
a difference.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask a klutz question. Who's smarter, the Aruch HaShulchan and the Mishnah Berurah? You think you can stick your nose into that argument? Okay, so I don't know. For all I know, neither one of them. Maybe they were both not so smart. Maybe they were both super geniuses. But we don't care who's smarter. That's not really how we paskin shilas, right? There are plenty of very smart people. Einstein was smart. Why don't we listen to him? The moment you start going down the road of who's the smartest, it's actually a very slippery slope, because just because a person's smart does not mean that they have that they're wise necessarily. You know what I'm saying?
Acher was also brilliant.
Brilliant, and Rameir was so brilliant that Rameir
Right,
would
but
want to learn from him.
that opinion is pretty off. It's
Got to finish your thought. I'm not sure what you're saying.
where he says that Beis Shammai was sharper. I mean, antithesis of what we're talking. Who
Why?
cares?
Why would you assume?
Einstein's smarter. Let's go with his opinion.
No. So it's an important distinction. We're not saying that the halacha for everyone should be like Beis Shammai. What we're saying for Beis Shammai themselves to paskin like the way they learned, they have every right to rely on their own way of doing
And
things.
you got two Torahs. What do you mean?
You're asking a different question now. We're not asking a Losis Go to do question here. We're asking here a question of what was the behavior of Beis Shammai before the Baskol. Before the Baskol was out, the machlokes between whether they did like themselves or they didn't was, did they rely on the Rov or not? The opinion who says they went and agreed with Beis Hillel was because they went and relied on the Rov. According to the opinion says no, they went on their own. It'll be because they held that they were smarter, and therefore they didn't have to necessarily go like the Rov. Meaning, there's a famous story, or I forget how it's quoted, but you only go with a majority when you have a suffix. If you don't have a suffix, if you don't have a doubt, you don't rely on majority. Right, like if I know the piece of meat is from the kosher store, even though there's only one kosher store and there's 10 not kosher stores, I don't say, well, I have to go up by Rove and say it came from them. If I don't have a doubt about this piece of meat, then I don't have to worry about majority. But Shammai would say, I don't have to go by majority because Beis Hillel is more of us because we have no doubt that we're correct. Meaning they're, right? But that's only because they held that they were smarter. Doesn't mean that the rest of us have to do that. Notice that the important here isn't, we're not saying that before the Baskol came out, a random guy in the street can go like Beis Shammai, right? Okay, so let's continue. We can answer that really the machlekes is happening even afterwards, meaning la'olam before the Baskol, like you're saying, Kalman, there'd be no reason to go like Beis Hillel over Beis Shammai. Each one goes according to their own opinion. After the Baskol comes out and Hashem says, Allah is like Beis Hillel, how could Beis Shammai paskin like Beis Shammai? Says the Gemara, Manda Amr Loy Asu, meaning they went like Beis Hillel, that makes sense. The Hanaf Kabaska, because they're following the Baskol. Manda Amr Asu, in the opinion who held that they didn't, that Beis Shammai said, sorry, we're still going to paskin like the way we hold. Rabbi Yoshua, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua. Who's Rabbi Yoshua? The Amr Ein Mashgichim, the Baskol. He says, just because a Baskol comes out, we don't listen. It's a famous Gemara in Brachis, right? There was a machlekes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua about a certain type of oven, whether it was Tamei or Tar, famous Gemara. And they went back and forth, and what ended up happening was that a Baskol came out and said, Halacha Rabbi Eliezer. And Rabbi Yeshua responded, I don't care. Ein mashgichin bebaskol. We don't, God gave us the Torah, we follow the Torah. That's what we go with.
Lo b'shamayim.
Lo b'shamayim,
Right.
exactly, correct.
So is that, but we don't hold like him.
I don't know about in the case of ovens and
No,
tum
I'm
and
saying
tara.
general.
Yeah.
Because we hold like the Bosco, you said.
We do hold like the Baskol when it comes to Bisham
Yeah,
Basil.
yeah.
Yeah. So clearly mashgichin bebaskol, at least when it comes
Right.
to that. Okay, so let's continue. So what are we saying here? We're saying that there's two opinions. Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, really the same things as Rav and Shmuel. It's not clear exactly when this machlekes occurred, but the point is it's possible that Beis Shammai, even though they held one way, behaved like Beis Hillel, or maybe they held like themselves, depending on different points throughout history.
Right.
Says the Gemara, Umanda Amr Asu. So now the Gemara addresses the question. According to the Manda Amr Asu, meaning that Beis Shammai acted like themselves, and Beis Hillel acted like themselves, meaning to say that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel had a machlekes, and Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel were noyeg the halachas based according to their own halacha, and yet they coexisted. Karina and Kan Leisis going to do, isn't this question of Leisis going to do Leisa'asu agudus? Don't split up the community into many different things. I heard a very nice shot this morning, connecting the idea of Leisis going to do by the pasuk itself of cutting versus the Leisis going to do of agudus. Is that what's the reason why a person shouldn't make Leisis going to do shtei tyrus? Is because the reason why you shouldn't do it is because it's nearer that like we're all not one. We're one group,
not
one
the
body,
outside,
right?
right,
Now,
yeah.
in order to that's only relevant if we can all be different bodies. I mean, Lamaisa, there's nothing wrong with having different people, different bodies, different body parts. But what Leisis Kodedu implies that in the neshama we're different, meaning that you could look like you and you could look like you, but your tefillin and your tefillin are the same, right? Meaning in the avodas Hashem of our neshama, we're all one, one group. Our neshamas are connected, and the ikar is the neshama, not the guf. So therefore, Leisis Kodedu is to say, don't make it look like we're all not one beating heart together. But so too, when a person cuts themselves, which is the pashup shot and what Leisis Kodedu means in the pasuk, it's saying a person shouldn't mourn too much to the point where he hurts himself. So the reason is because why? Because it implies that you're so avelos over the body being dead, But don't forget that the neshama is in the better place now. Meaning again, it's also out of a concern, a misplaced a priority in thinking that all that matters is the body. Obviously, the neshama is the primary thing. Just like Lois going to do with agudos is don't do it out of a concern to disrespect the neshama. So too, don't cut yourself. It's disrespecting the neshama. To say that Reb Chaim Kanievsky is in a worse place now? No, he's in a better place than the neshama. His body's in the ground. All right, mazel tov, but his neshama is flying. Yeah, so too, same idea. But anyway, isn't this a problem? Are acting differently. Rabbi says no. Now we're going to get into a little bit of the details of do. When do we say is a problem that you shouldn't jump into two separate groups? That's only when that's when you actually have one city with two bezdins, meaning you have two leaders, each one sort of making two different and opposing rules, and that creates problems in a community. That would be a problem. If you have two bezdins in two cities, less lanba, it's no big deal, right? Meaning to say, and that'll explain the Megillah problem, which was brought up yesterday. The whole conversation started because we said, how can you have it that you're reading Megillah on Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Yud Dalet, Tesvav, which came up in Megillah? What about Leisis guy? The answer is they were doing it in different cities. Walled cities did it their way, unwalled cities did it their way. So if you split it up geographically, you don't have a problem, right? Meaning, in northern Africa, they might have a different minhag than they have in, Italy. That's okay, no big deal, right? Because as long as it's not living amongst each other and everyone's doing two different things. Now again, you have to know.
That's I'm sorry. That's the whole thing with the concept with the vadia, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Most
That's
sort
a
of.
major issue of Leisis Gad to do. Absolutely, when you have two separate vadi kashras,
Well, especially
becomes a
when you
major
have
issue.
one with Risora, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. Now another conversation that is very relevant to that conversation is it's sort of a little bit of it's a funny conversation because on the one hand, if you have one, let's say psak, one vad or one group, then the second one has got a problem of Leisis Gad to do. But let's say once you already move into a community, there's like 5 vadim.
Right. And flat.
At that point,
right.
the 6th vad isn't doing anything.
Right.
At that point, you're already entering a situation where everyone knows, like, all right, everyone does their own thing here, right? That doesn't look like shtei tyrus. It's only shtei tyrus, it seems, when you have two. It's like, well, which one's the right thing? Is this restaurant kosher or not? Well, if these two groups think yeah, and those 4 think not, or then it's already, people can all sort of look at that and be like, all right, there must be a detailed question. But if it just looks like that sign says kosher, and then this group of people throws a strafe on it, then that's near a shtei tyrus. That's a problem. And again, I'm not passing any shilas here. I'm not passing any shilas here. Ask your local Orthodox feminist rabbi.
No me.
That's what's the yeah. We bring Shimachuri here. Okay. Rav says no. Meaning, I understand. Beisham and Beis Hillel are so well known that it's like they're going to exist in every community. Talmidim of both. You're going to have bezdins from both groups in one city. So how could it be that the Talmidim of Beis Hillel and Talmidim of Beis Shammai can do different things in the same city? That's the problem of Leisis Gad to do. Rav says different svara. Kamrin and Leisis Gad. When do we say Leisis Gad to do? Going be bezdin be'er achas. That's when you have one bezdin in be'er achas. Plag merin k'divrei Beis Shammai, plag merin k'divrei Beis Hillel. So it's not two vadim, but you have one vad, and within the vad you don't have one voice. Meaning you have people that are part of the same bezdin who are quietly disseminating a halacha not like that privately. That's a major problem of Leisis Gad, which makes it a much smaller issue. Because now you can avoid this rabbi passes this way, this rabbi passes that way. But if we're all part of the same bezdin and we're putting out a proclamation as to what the halacha should be, I almost feel it would be like if the vad would say that a certain restaurant is not kosher, and then one of the guys in the bezdin is seen in the restaurant eating there. That sounds like a Leisis Gad to do to me. Which one is it? It's two tyrus. That's already like a much more. It's more. I think Rav's vart here is a question of hypocrisy. It almost seems as if you can't have one bezdin passing X, and then on the side you have groups veering off of that and saying not like that. Either way, that's not a problem because this is the halacha according to him. This is the halacha according to him. Okay, so the question now becomes Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says Leisis Gad to do. So we're now going to be asking questions on Leisis Gad to do on Rish Lakish. We're working within the assumption that Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold of Leisis Gad to do, although some Rishonim say that that's not true. We'll work like that. Toshma, following brisa. I'll explain what that is in a second. Okay. So now it says the Gemara like this. These are two opinions that are not brought lahalacha, but just to understand. Mila b'Shabbos is mutter. Right? The halacha is you're allowed to do the mila on the 8th day if it falls out on Shabbos. The 8th day of a person's boy's life falls out on Shabbos. If he's healthy, you do the mila. Mila is a malacha on Shabbos. You can't take blood. You can't cause a chabura. The answer is that we have a special halacha that mila on Shabbos is mutter. Now, what happens if the knife's not sharp? Are you allowed to sharpen the knife? Are you allowed to cook the knife? Are you allowed to burn the ashes that's going to be used to sharpen the knife? Are you allowed to do all of these machshirei? These are all preparation for the ultimate mitzvah. So we hold no. We hold that you're only allowed to do that. Rabbi Akiva holds you're only allowed to do that which you could not have done before Shabbos. But if you could have done it before Shabbos and you didn't, then all of a sudden you have no right to do that. And if that means you're not going to do the mila, you're not doing the mila. It is what it is, right? You're not going to do the mila with a not kosher knife or a scalpel that's got nicks in it, right? So says the Gemara that what about the opinion of Rebbe Eliezer? Rebbe Eliezer hold how you karsimates him. They would go ahead and burn the wood. They cut the wood to burn the wood to make the ash. Lasos barzel to make the knife, to sharpen the knife. They would do it on Shabbos because all of these malachas were needed for the knife to do the mitzvah of mil. It's actually mitzvah. It's completely mutter. That's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, which we don't hold like. And again, the key here is Bim Koimish Rabbi Eliezer. In his city, in his town, if a mila happened on the 8th day and they came to Rabbi Eliezer and said, Rabbi Eliezer, we don't have the knife, it's okay, go cut the tree down, go burn the thing, no problem. It's all actually mitzvah. That's Rabbi Eliezer's psak. No problem. Sounds like
Let's go to them.
License going to do, right? What's his opinion? Now we hold that at least midirabanan, you're not allowed to have chicken with milk. Meaning, because when the Torah says basar b'chalav, min Torah we understand it to mean only, what does it say? Lo svashel gedi b'chalevimo. It has to be in its mother's milk, which means we hold that halacha only applies to animals that milk. Chickens don't milk. There's no milk from a chicken, right? It's only animals that actually nurse, or that create milk. So therefore, min haTorah, that's the only type of basar that's going to be a problem with basar b'chalav. But chicken and duck and whatever it is, min haTorah is not. But midirabanan, we say it's asr. Rav Yossi Aglili says no. Even midirabanan, it's going to be mutter, and therefore he holds basar oif with chalav is mutter.
And they
So
and
they did. And Rav Yossi Aglili, if you came from Rav Yossi Aglili's line or you passed the line in his community, chicken parm, no problem. That's completely okay. A good piece of chicken parm. Yeah.
Does anyone hold like that? That's good.
Rav Yossi Aglili. Not today. Rav Yossi Aglili. There's something very wonderful and novel about learning new things that you've never learned before, where you start to think like there's a whole sea of Yiddishkeit that I'm not aware of. It's like, wait, are there things that maybe I'm not? I should be partaking in that I can't. But either way, Rav Yossi Aglili has this halach. Now it says the Gemara, Bim Koimish Rabbi Eliezer in Bim Koimish Rabbi Akiva Loi. What do you see? You see over here that they would do this only in the city of Rabbi Eliezer, but they wouldn't do it anywhere else, right? And Bim Koimish Rabbi Akiva Loi, they wouldn't do it in Bim Koimish Rabbi Akiva. The Tanya, like the Brisa says, this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Klal Omer Rabbi Akiva, Kol Malach Shav Shal Atzayis Erev Shabbos. This is the opinion that I mentioned earlier. He holds any malacha that could be done Erev Shabbos, Ein Doichas Shabbos, does not then become mutter and on Shabbos, even though you need it for the Milah. Because the answer is you could have done it before. What's the question? Why don't we say like this guy to do over here? What is the business over here that someone says, what do you mean? What type of question is this? It says Mikoimis Mikainashani. We said 2 seconds ago that geography changes things. Like in his city, it's this way, in his city, it's that way. You're asking me a question from Belez and Rabbi Akiva. It's not a kasha. It's not like this guy to do. And this city is like this, and this city is like that. In fact, Rava said, even in the same city, if it's 2 separate bezdin, what's the kasha? He says, what was the Gemara's thinking in asking this question? Obviously, this isn't a Leisis going to do case. Gemara says no. I might have thought the following thing. I might have said that since we're talking about Malacha of Shabbos, the severity of Shabbos is so much, I might have had a Havamina, that even though normally it wouldn't be a case of Leisis going to do, when it comes to a very severe halacha like Shabbos, we have to be very concerned for Leisis going to do because we really don't want people to think there's two Torahs. Which again, by the way, it just makes it very obvious that when we talk about Leisis going to do being a problem of Nira Kishtei Torahs, we are not at all concerned how the Goyim think. This is entirely about the Yidden, meaning we don't want a Jew to think, oh, I guess there's 2 different Torahs. I could just do what I want. That's really where the Nira Kishtei Torahs is. That some random guy walking down the street is like, I don't get it. These guys are shaking the lulav on this day, and they're not. We don't care. That's not a concern for us. The concern is a Jew who's going to see it, and he's going to accidentally or incorrectly think the halacha is the
We're
other way.
not concerned about that by the chicken and the egg because it's a different stringency.
So it's a good question. So if I understand your question correctly, the Gemara is not asking for that
Correct.
part. It's only asking for the
Correct,
Shabbos one.
correct.
And that's only because Shabbos is stringent.
Right.
There's
Got
no
it.
havamina by the chicken
Yeah,
situation. That's
right.
definitely not like this.
Got it.
Gemara was only asking. Very
Got
good, very good question. Mashallah, not like that. Okay, Toshma, another brisa, another kasha and Rish Lakish. So just very quickly, I want to just very brief hakdama, and of course I know you know these halachas very well because you learned all of Masechta Shabbos and Masechta Beya. So we're going to talk about muktzah just for 2 seconds. We know there's a machlekes, famous machlekes, Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda. We're going to keep it super basic. There's a machlekes, Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda, whether we hold of muktzah. Now, it does not mean that someone doesn't hold the muktzah. It means, do you take the stringent form of muktzah? Meaning there are certain scenarios where if one could or could not define something as muktzah, Reb Shimon held it's not. Meaning there's certain cases where he was much lighter when it came to muktzah, and Reb Yehuda was much more machmir. So it's a machlokas that runs through the entire Seder Moed when it comes to Hilchas Muktzah. So, knowing that, let's talk about the following halacha. If I have a torch, let's say right, and it's lit
Low
before,
torch.
right? If I have a torch that was lit before Shabbos, right, and now I'm carrying it on Shabbos, it's still lit. Everyone's masking that's Muktzah. Nothing to talk about. Like a flashlight, completely Muktzah. From Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. And everyone's masking if I have that same torch that was put out before Shabbos, that's 100% not muktzah. Why? Because I'm allowed to use it for whatever reason. Yeah, right. Everyone agrees if you have a lit torch, that's muktzah, and everyone agrees if you have a torch or candle, whatever that was put out, that's not muktzah. That's everyone agrees without getting too far into the details. There's a machlokes amirayim between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon Levi. What's the halacha if you have a candle or a torch that was lit as Shabbos came in, so it was muktzah in that moment, and now wind came and blew it out, and now so on the one hand, it is started Shabbos off as muktzah. On the other hand, it's right now in a status that had it been in this status when Shabbos came in, it's not muktzah. So how do we deal with it? So there's a machlekes and hilchos muktzah over there. What the halachas? We don't have to get too far into the details. The point is there's 2 different opinions. You have a question about muktzah. Is it super relevant?
Yeah.
I'll decide. Go ahead.
Sort of.
Okay.
I wouldn't walk around with I don't. If the candle went out 3 weeks ago, I was
Mazel tov.
Yeah,
You
I
wouldn't
probably-
do it? Oh, then forget about it.
I'd probably also not take
No,
something and whack a
Exactly.
horse on Shabbos.
Is what muktzah?
I'm walking around with a candle, on Shabbos.
Is it lit?
But that's muktzah.
No, he's saying not lit.
But
I'm not passing any shilas. I'm telling you what they held. They held in the Gemara. I'm not passing
I'm
any
not walking
shilas.
around
You're
with
asking
a
me.
hammer, unless I had.
We're
it
getting
in
into
mind
muktzah shilas now. We're not.
Unless I had it in mind that I was gonna, open up a
Wow.
peanut. I'm not
Alright.
walking around with a hammer. So a candle. What's the purpose of a
That's a good
candle?
question.
It's a good question. It's a good question. Why is it not muktzah? You're asking a very good question. It's a fantastic question.
Why
It's not a Yevamos question. It's a wonderful question. I don't actually have a good
I
answer for
think it
you.
probably would be muktzah.
Nowadays, I think we were passing it as muktzah. What's the purpose?
If it doesn't have utility up for Shabbos, then it's all muktzah,
Yeah,
right?
that's correct.
Probably
correct.
would be muktzah.
Other
Let's say
of it.
you're moving it because you need the space. Let's say you need to pay.
So it could be it's a klisha malach lisser and a klisha malach lisser is mutter litzer. Different. So it's a muktzah question. Okay. So now the point is, there's 2 opinions. You have Rabbi Shimon Levi and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says it's aser because he holds like Rabbi Yehuda's chumrah version of muktzah, and Rabbi Shimon Levi holds his mutter like Rabbi Shimon. Now, why is that relevant? The following story: Tashma. The story of Rabbi Avahu, ki ikla la asrid Rabbi Shimon Levi, when he went to visit Rabbi Shimon Levi, who held that this type of candle, unlit candle that had gone out, he holds it, it's mutter, have him metaltal shraga. He would be metaltal it. He would carry it, in accord with Rabbi Shimon Levi. V'chi ikla la asrid Rabbi Yochanan, when he got to the city of Rabbi Yochanan, lo have metaltal shraga. He wouldn't carry this type of thing. Meaning, in one city he did one way, and the other city he did the other way. And the implication is that what says the Gemara? Isn't this a problem of Leisis guy to do? Meaning he's acting like this one, and he's acting like that one. It's near a Kishtei Tyrus. Now again, the question is a little strange because it's not like he's doing it. The point is that
He's doing it in the city where it's allowed.
right. I mean, he's doing what's allowed
Right.
where it's allowed, what's not allowed where it's not allowed. So the Gemara is bothered by exactly what we're asking. Hi, my kusha. What's the kasha? I don't understand. He's doing what's okay here, and he's doing what's
Right.
problematic. But did we not say that you could do what you do over here, and I could do what I do over here? The fact that you in your city hold what I'm doing over here is usher, and that the people over here hold what he's doing over there is mutter, that doesn't matter. You do over there what you do, I'll do over here. There's no license guy to do. Gemara says, "Anan hachi kamina." No, what's the question? Rabba vahu hechi avid hachi, hevi avid hacha hachi, vehechi avid hacha hachi. How is it that he himself could do what's over here is usher and what's over here is mutter. Isn't that inherently contradictory? And the way we're shown to speak it out here is, and what would be the problem? Because it's inconsistent, it's hypocritical. Well, that hypocrisy, if it's an issue, right, for him, if it's not an issue for him individually,
Right.
then what's the difference? Let it communally, it should be not a difference either. Meaning, either it's a problem to act hypocritically, or it's not an issue to act hypocritically. If it is
For him.
individually,
Right.
then it should be for us communally. That's the way the Gemara explains it.
Uh-huh.
The Rishon, Rebavo, could be a Shuv and Levi. So the Gemara says no. Lo Elami holds like Shuv and Levi that it's mutter, right? Why was he, when he got to the city of Rabbi Yochanan, not doing it? What do you mean? If I'm not makban achal of Yisrael, and you're makban achal of Yisrael, and I go to your house, I'm not going to take my chol of stam into your house. It's just a question of respect. I'm not going to take out a Milky Way and start eating in front of you. You're makban to only eat, I don't know, click, whatever chol of Yisrael is, yeah? V'chi miklo la'asur der Rabbi Yochanan, I'll have metal to mishum kvoid der Rabbi Yochanan. He says, okay, that's wonderful for himself. Why he explained that way? The ha'ika shama, the shamish, who would travel with a Ravo, would just be watching a Ravo, and he would say, I don't get it. When he goes here, he carries it. When he goes here, he doesn't carry it. That looks like Shnei Tyrus. It's very simply, but tell the shamish, hey buddy, don't get nervous. I'm not going to carry the thing over here. I'm not going to. Now, it happens to be the Gemara is a little bit difficult only because we had said yesterday that even Rish Lakish, when he brought up this whole discussion of Leisis Goydid, it was very clear. Leisis Goydid was only an issue when there's no way to interpret their behavior as anything other than following what the halacha says. But if I have a common sense reason for why someone's doing something, then that's not Leisis Goydid. Maybe the reason why he's not carrying the torch when he's in the place where you're not allowed to carry it is because he didn't need it. Meaning, it has to be that I have to view each behavior as entirely. Meaning, it always has to be like wear tefillin, don't wear tefillin. That's maybe a Leisis Goydid to do. If you're not wearing tefillin, you're making a choice. I don't wear tefillin today. If you're wearing tefillin, you're making a choice. Halachically, I wear tefillin. But, well, maybe you could say the argument there, maybe he's not wearing tefillin because he has to go to the bathroom. I'm saying it has to be obvious from your behavior that you're doing it for halachic reasons. Either way, says the Gemara back to Tashma. It said in the Mishnah that Beis Shammai would marry the people from Beis Hillel, and Beis Hillel would marry the people from Beis Shammai. Remember, according to Beis Hillel, many of these ladies might be mamzerim. According to Beis Shammai, many of these ladies might actually still be connected to a yavam. Right? So also, if you'll tell me that Beis Shammai went ahead and did everything like Beis Hillel, everything makes sense. Everyone would marry each other because everyone was going like Beis Hillel. Everything's kosher v'yosher. There are no mamzerim. Also, if you're telling me Beis Shammai did like Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel did like Beis Hillel, amai lo nimnu. Right? So Gemara says like this: Bishlam Beis Shammai mi Beis Hillel lo nimnu. I understand why Beis Shammai had no problem marrying Beis Hillel because what are we discussing already? Okay, she's a shemeres yavam. She's still connected. She should get a chalitza. It's a lav. It's certainly a problem. The bnei chayvi lavinu, but it's only a lav. There's no mamzeris. So that makes sense why Beis Shammai had no problem marrying Beis Hillel. However, Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, amai lo nimnu. Beis Hillel can't marry into Beis Shammai's world because bnei chayvi creases mamzerim ninu. Every one of these women, maybe they're a mamzer. You can't marry a mamzer. That you're talking about creating mamzeris. The tzara. You marry the tzara, it's a kares. Because if it's only a mamzer, it's also only a lav. Yep. V'chi teima kasavri Beis Hillel the ein mamzer mechayvi creases. Says the Gemara, maybe you'll say the Beis Hillel holds that you don't create a mamzer unless it's chayve mises bezdin. Meaning there's such an opinion who holds that we only create a kares. It's not just a kares that makes mamzer, but that it's only chayve mises bezdin when it's only when it's capital punishment case does it create mamzeris. In which case that's the reason why Beis Hillel had no problem marrying, because here you're only talking about chayve keep creases, which again is not 100% true because there are some women in our Mishnah who are also chayve mises bezdin. But the Gemara is just pointing out that it could be that's what you think. Meaning to say that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel may argue about tzaros, but kol modim that a tzara, although a tzara might not create mamzer, according to Beis Shammai and according to Beis Hillel it does, everyone's masking that a kares will create mamzer. In which case, then why would Beis Hillel marry into Beis Shammai? Also, isn't this a proof that it must be that Beis Shammai must have behaved like Beis Hillel? Meaning to say that even though they held differently, they acted in accord with Beis Hillel, because otherwise, how was it possible for Beis Hillel to marry into Beis Shammai? Lo, not true. Lo'ilam, they each held like their own, and therefore, in Beis Hillel's world, Beis Shammai, some of the Beis Shammai women were mamzerim and erevas, and in Beis Shammai's world, the Hillel ladies might have been still connected to their yavam. Gemara says, not a problem. It's because they would each treat each other with respect to let the other person know, listen, I don't hold of you la halacha, but I know that where you hold, this lady's a mamzer, so I'm going to let you know she's a mamzer. Don't marry her. And this woman's a tzara, she's an erva. And the same thing in the other direction. Beis Hillel ladies would say to Beis Shammai's men, you should know she's she's still connected. According to us, she's mutter to marry anyone, but according to you, she's still connected to a yavam. She needs chalitza. So says the Gemara, this svara, this answer makes sense. Why? The Katani Seifa, what does it say in our Mishnah at the end? It said the last case in our Mishnah was that Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. It says like this: Kol hataharos v'chol hatmein shayu elu mitarin ve'elu mitamin. They each had different opinions about tum and tara. Lo nimnu oisim taharos elu al gabi elu. They wouldn't stop lending kalim to each other, even though according to Beis Shammai they are tamei, and according to Beis Hillel they are tar. Now it's very interesting. You might ask, why is this any more of a raya? The Gemara says. It says in the Mishnah that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel would marry into each other, and to prove that fact that it was because they would tell each other what to do, he brings the second case. Well, who says that's what they did there? Maybe meaning the
No
same.
courage there anyway.
Yeah,
right?
it happens. Yeah. So first things first. It's not the same case, but there's no more of a raya from the second case than the first case. But either way, the Gemara is going to answer that question. So meaning our Mishnah makes sense if you say that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel would tell each other, hey, this keli is tummy, this keli is tar. Mishum hachi lo nimnu, it makes sense to say that's the reason why they would borrow kalim from each other. That they didn't tell each other. It makes sense to say why Beis Shammai had no problem using Beis Hillel's kalim, because Beis Hillel was the one who was always saying tahor, right? The Tmei is the Beis Hillel. Sorry, when Beis Hillel would say tamei, the Beis Shammai tahoris ninu. It's the other way around. Why would Beis Hillel not use Beis Shammai's? Right? Meaning, according to Beis Shammai, it's tamei, but according to Beis Hillel, they're all tahor. Tahor is the Beis Shammai, the Beis Hillel tmei is ninu. Meaning, it goes the other way. So Gemara says, it must be that they told each other. Says the Gemara. So you brought me a raya from the second case to the first case. Meaning, isn't it just both cases where they borrowed, or that they would marry into each other? There's no more of a proof in one case over the other. The Gemara says, no, you're right. Mahu detema, I would have thought, Sarah Kala Isla. I might think if all you had was the first case of Kala, of Sarah, I might think that they wouldn't have to tell each other, hey, this woman is an erva, and therefore be careful. Why? Because the general assumption is everyone's going to know. You know who she was? She was once married to that guy, and he died. So even though Beis Shammai holds that she's mutter, and Beis Hillel holds that she's an erva, people would know about it, and you'd find out, and therefore they didn't have to tell each other. The second case, you see that they would have no problem with the kalim. No one has. I have absolutely no to what you did with your serving dish. There's no rumors about your serving dishes. There are rumors about a lady, who she married to, and so says the Gemara. Kamashla, I needed both cases. Okay, Gufa. Gemara is quoting from the earlier case before. What did we say? He said, Amar Rabbi Lazar, even though, like the Mishnah said, Beis Shammai holds that Tzaras Erva is not a Asar, she's Chayiv in Yibum, and Beis Hillel holds no, she's P'turim in a Yibum, and therefore she's an Erva Mamish of Eshesach. Even though that's the case, Modim, they both agree, She'ein Mamzer Elamimi, She'isuro Isser Erva, Ve'onosh Karetz. They both agree that a Mamzer is only created from a relationship that is a Chiyav Karetz, right? Isser Erva V'chiyav Karetz. Now the question is, who is agreeing to who? When it says it says Modim. Modim She'ein. Modim who? Was Beis Hillel being Modim to Beis Shammai that the Tzaras Erva does not create a Mamzer? Or is Beis Shammai being moted to Beis Hillel that even though in this case Beis Shammai says it would be a mamzer? Ask the Gemara. Man modim. Ilay me Beis Shammai le Beis Hillel. To say that Beis Shammai agrees to Beis Hillel, pshita, meaning it's for sure pashut that it's not going to be the Yevamos l'shuk, meaning to say that Beis Shammai's isser. What does Beis Shammai hold? Beis Shammai holds that this tzara is still connected to the Yavam. So Beis Shammai is saying to Beis Hillel, I agree with you that the ladies that I hold are usher are not a kares. That's obvious. Why would I ever think they're a kares? Yevamos l'shuk is not a chiyav kares. That's only a lav. B'nei chayvei lavin. Ksherim ninu. No one would hold that that's going to be a problem. There's no mamzeris being created there. Ella Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel is being moted to Beis Shammai that the ladies that I hold are usher, even though they should be a kares and therefore create mamzerim. I'm saying they're not mamzerim. Yes, that can't be. He gufa chayvi krisis. This woman saras erva chayvi krisis. And of course, the children from that relationship are going to be a mamzer. According to Beis Hillel. Right? So lo'olam Beis Shammai leBeis Hillel. Lo'olam, what Beis Shammai is being moted to is to Beis Hillel, in the sense that you're right. I will say that these ladies who are Yevamos l'shuk and therefore are usher to be with any other man because they're still connected to the Yavam. He's agreeing that there's no tfisas kiddushin. Sorry, that there's no mamzeris. And what I'm saying, it's pashut. Everyone knows chayvei lavin doesn't create mamzeris. Says the Gemara, ulafuki b'de Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is always brought in whenever you need to answer this question, because Rabbi Akiva has the unique shita that says that chayvei lavin is not tofetz kiddushin, and a child from chayvei lavin is a mamzer. That means a kohen marries a grusha. He's not allowed to. and has a child with that lady, according to Rabbi Akiva, the child's a mamzer. Mamash a mamzer.
How we bring it to this case? We're talking about evil.
It doesn't matter. According to Beis Shammai, when Tzara,
Marry somebody else.
right, meaning like this. Let's say you have Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Shimon's
Right.
married to two ladies. Dina, a
Right.
regular lady,
Right.
and Rachel, who is an Ereva. According to Beis Shammai, Dina still has a din yibum, right? That's
Right,
a whole.
correct,
So
yes.
that woman now, so that woman, let's say she went ahead and married Cal. Is she allowed to? No. Midaraisa, it's a Isser Lav. But if she tried to marry, it would work. Why? Because it's only Chayvei Lav, and that's how we hold. Rabbi Akiva holds not like that. Rabbi Akiva holds all Averas, all Lavin, all Losases
All
are
love.
like Kares.
I
No
got it,
different.
I got it.
So the Gemara is explaining that Beis Shammai is agreeing to Beis Hillel and saying that when this Yevama, this Tzara, who according to Beis Shammai is Asr as a Lav, I need to teach you that I agree with Beis Hillel that she's not going to be creating a mamzer. Why would I think you do create a mamzer? Because Rabbi Akiva holds that. And I want to show you not like Rabbi Akiva. Now it's interesting. Why would Beis Shammai be saying this? Beis Shammai is not the one saying it. It's the Gemara saying in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer is saying that Beis Shammai is moda to Beis Hillel, not like Rabbi Akiva. The Amar Yesh Mamzer Mechai B'Lavin, Kamash Malandei Mamzer Mechai B'Lavin. Okay, Toshma, new Brisa. Brisa is going back on the question of whether we held Beis Shammai did like Beis Hillel or did Beis Shammai do like themselves. Afal Pisha Nechluku Beis Shammai Beis Hillel B'Tzarais. And we're going to list a whole bunch of sugis here that Beis Shammai Beis Hillel have famous machleksim. Says the Brisa, even though Beis Shammai Beis Hillel argue B'Tzarais, which is our Mishnah, Ube'achiyos, which is a Mishnah later on of Achos Kukasa, Beget Yashan, which is an interesting halacha, without getting too much into the details, when someone gives a woman a get, but he then has yichud with her. Do we have to be concerned that perhaps the yichud led to something and not, and therefore they're still married? But you can't use a get that was. They wrote a get. The get was kosher. Before he gave the get to her, there was yichud. We have to be concerned that perhaps the get now the das that he had is not real because the yichud maybe it fell back in love. Ubisafek, Eshish, there's different opinions. Some say this is talking about a case of miyun, when it's the Beis Shammai Beis Hillel have an argument about miyun, right? What is miyun? The little katana could always renege and lemafreya uproot it, which means every moment between now and 12 years old is like a suffix if she's married. Why? Because we don't know what she's going to do. But from now until that time she turns 12. Which is very similar to the case I just mentioned before. What about a man gives a get to his wife, but then he spends a night in a hotel with her?
You gave her the get already?
Gave her the get.
And well, I'm afraid was saying it's not a get.
So well, no. So we don't. Well, that's a massive discussion. But the question over here is, we have to be choshesh that maybe he remarried her, which meaning to say we have to know, does she need a get now or not? Right? It's a big sugya in Gittin. But either way, it would be kasef of a shavik. At the beginning of kedushin, there's a machlekes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel exactly how much one needs to use to marry a woman. Is it a pruta, shavet pruta, dinner, shavet dinner? Pruta, V'shavet Pruta. These are all cases where Beis Shammai Beis Hillel had all these big machleksim, and we're going to try to answer the question of whether Beis Shammai held like Beis Hillel or did they hold of their own opinion. So what does it say? Afapi that they argued in all of these cases, Lo nimno Beis Shammai mi lisa nash mi Beis Hillel, Lo Beis Hillel mi Beis Shammai, meaning to say they intermarried, they connected, their communities were intertwined, right? Because they loved each other and they treated each other with tremendous amount of respect. L'kayim hashnemar, to be mekayim what it says in the pasuk. Emes v'hashalom ahavo. You can have emes, you can have the truth, and you can have shalom and peace. Ahavo, they love each other. Meaning to say, Beis Shammai Beis Hillel had a tremendous amount of respect for each other.
Where do we say that?
I don't know. It's
Sheva brachas,
Sheva
right?
brachas.
So, sweetheart, would that be Medina?
yeah, of course.
That's Medina.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But Adarabah, the Haidah is where you show the love. I mean, that the love is
Even though I respect your opinion.
Yeah. meaning, you understand? Meaning, just try to. I try to. When I was reading the Gemara, I was trying to think. Imagine you have Baal Tshuva, who is keeping kosher, and his parents Nebuch are not. Comes back from yeshiva. He's all from now. He comes home and he's like, "Oh my gosh, my parents, they don't keep anything, right?" And so they're good people, so they want to be nice, and so they get him paper plates and they do the whole thing. And then something happens. The mother, she's not a religious lady. She's not thinking twice, and she made him eggs. She made him eggs in a pot instead of whatever. In her head, it's all narishkeit. It's just eggs in a pot. Don't be crazy. She doesn't have to say anything in her mind. In her mind, the whole thing is, it's fake to her. To him, it's his whole world. But it's a spiritual reality. You can't see the tumah. You can't see the treif and the eggs. She tells him because she loves him. That's the only reason why you tell someone, because it won't be because of what you believe, because she thinks,
Yep.
right? To me, it's always like that. It's like, did you take challah or did you not take challah from this bread? I don't know if you did or if you didn't. If you took it, we're good. If you didn't take it, this is tevel. I can't eat it. But I don't know if you took it or if you didn't took it. You'll only tell me if you care about me. If you don't care about me, because again, if you don't think it matters, right? Hey, if you ask a friend, hey, it's not from, and it's a week after Pesach, and he invites you over to his house and have some lunch, you got to know, was this chametz sold or not? Or was it chametz shalav up the whole thing?
Right.
Now, if he doesn't care about you, right, even if he doesn't care about God, right, so he might think that the chametz is, who cares? Chametz shalav Pesach, I think the whole thing's narishkeit. But if he cares about you and your narish beliefs to him, right, he should tell you. If he doesn't tell you, then find new friends. Even though he's either way. So says the Gemara that they loved each other so much they would be ma'idiyah them. Now, okay, so this is the brisa, right? That's the brisa. Reb Shimon Omer nimnu hein min havadai velo nimnu min hasafek. Meaning Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel would keep from those things that are vadai, but not those things that are safek. So that's the brisa. It makes sense to say the Beis Shammai held like themselves and Beis Hillel did like themselves. Then everything makes sense. It makes sense to say that they separated. Eli Amris loy also. If you're going to tell me that they anyways all went like Beis Hillel, what does it mean? Amai nimnu. Mar says 1 second. V'tizbara nihi nami da also. Even if you say that someone like Beis Shammai and someone like Beis Hillel, Bishlam Beis Hillel nimnu mi Beis Shammai. It makes sense why Beis Hillel cleared away from Beis Shammai. The chayve krisis ninu, because but at least when it comes to tzaras, there's a problem, like we just said earlier. Mamzerim heim leBeis Hillel. According to Beis Hillel, these ladies are all mamzerim. Meaning the tzaras is an erev and the child's a mamzer. Ela Beis Shammai amai nimnu b'Beis Hillel. Why did Beis Shammai not marry Beis Hillel? B'nei chayve lavinin uksherim ninu. Meaning, what's the problem? Meaning, again, it's also, but it's not a reason not to marry. It's not like you're going to create mamzerim. It seems that the only reason why you wouldn't marry in is you don't want to create mamzerim. You're right. Mitzad that. It's Rav Nachman's talking about another case somewhere else, nothing related to us. The reason why is for the tzara herself, meaning to say, 1 second, let me make sure I have this right. Meaning, really, it was, 1 second, did I mistake this? From the tzara herself. Meaning, it wasn't the mamzerim that there was a problem. They would be nimna from the tzara herself in both directions. Beis Shammai would steer clear of the tzara because of the iser Yevamos lashuk, and Beis Hillel would steer clear of the tzara atzma because of the iser kares. But einachanami, the children that came off of it, Beis Shammai had no problem marrying into Beis Hillel. It was only the other way around. And 1 second, let's read the next line. Yeah, umayshna min avadai the isurahu safik nami isura. I understand. If they would not. They wouldn't intermingle, right? They wouldn't marry each other only on Isurim Avadai, but on Isurim of Safik. Isur is Isur. What's the difference? Gemara says, Lo tema min hasafik. Don't say that they wouldn't do it min hasafik. Elo ema min hastam. Meaning, you don't know. Why? The Modolu Parshi. My Kamash Blan, the Ahava, Vereus, Nahagim Zebazeh. That was already brought up in the earlier part of the Brisa. Hainu Reisha. No, Hakamash Blan, the Kula Reb Shemini. The explanation is that you're right. Really, when you read the Bryce, it's mashma that there's a Tanakam and Reb Shimon's arguing. This Chiddush here is telling me that the entire Bryce is Reb Shimon. So therefore, that's where we're holding. Okay.
What was you saying?
Reb Shimon was the one who said Vadai and Safek that they would. All right, we'll pause here.
Pausing.
Oh yeah, we'll stop here.